Okay, you can probably suddenly hear me now. I'm here. Important super technical detail is that if you set everything up on a USB audio interface, you need to connect it via USB. Okay, so I hope you all can hear me now, and I hope that the volume and stuff isn't too bad. Cool, thanks. Let's go ahead and get started. Basically, I'll just reiterate what I was trying to say before, and I'll end the little, I'm going to remove the goal for a second here, because I was just using that as kind of like a timekeeper thing. So basically, I'm going to sort of act like we have like a 45-minute lesson in a way. So this is partly out of the goodness of my heart. I'm going to pretend like you just got your XY, you're excited to make music on it, and your main focus is like making a song, like arranging something, playing notes, figuring out how things work. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of stuff like sampling or super creative stuff. My goal is to just cover a lot of ground here and get you started so that you know how to make songs from scratch. And this will not be a super long stream because I am taking a lesson at noon, so that's 55 minutes from right now. So I would like to wrap it up well before then. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go ahead and pretend. Let's just turn this off. On switches here. I'm not going to get too in the weeds about the beginner stuff, but I feel like you should be able to get yourself oriented. Weirdly enough, the first button you need to know is this one right here, which is supposed to be like a pen or a quill or something like that. That's the project button. This is how you're going to make a new project or load projects. Shift and this will, by default, take you out to all your factory presets first, and then you have your own presets that you've saved. I promise this isn't going to be a huge part of the video. We're going to get to the actual stuff soon. So let's just press the project button, and I'm going to hold down new, and now I've made a brand new project. So the first button that we went through was that project button, and that's just because you really need to know, you don't want to be stuck always having to, start with the last project. So let's go ahead and move on to the instrument tracks. Now this is where I'm going to take a step back, and I want to say one of the key things here is that most of the ways you're navigating are going to be up here. This is most of what you want to do when you're actually arranging a song. It's going to be these 5 buttons, but we can include tempo just because we don't want it to feel left out. But like this project button, like I just discussed, then these are the different modes. This is where you're probably going to spend the most time. This is going to pull up these instrument tracks. So basically, it's worth taking the time to remember that, like, if I'm switching, wait, what am I trying to say? Let me rewind. I just think it's worth taking the time to like kind of think, okay, that's navigation up there, because if you're trying to go up here and you're not trying to change the mode that you're in or the types of tracks that you're looking at, you shouldn't be over here. It's probably somewhere else. Okay, so what we're seeing right now is actually just like the sequence for one of the instrument tracks. I press the instrument button, we're in instrument mode. How do we know what track we're on? It's the highlighted one. One thing that you're going to get confused on, like for the first several months, is that there are the numbers 1 through 4 several times here. There are these buttons, and these are M1, M2, M3, and M4. That's what they call it, the modules. And I'm just going to use those names because otherwise it's going to get really confusing, because I'm going to say 3, and you're going to see me press a 3. Then you're going to go to your XY, and you're going to press this 3. And then you're going to be like, what just happened? I did that for a long time for my first few months. So note that there's these 1 through 4, the 1 through 4 here, which are going to be the track buttons. And there's also these 1 through 4, I'll probably call them value keys out of habit. I don't remember what they're called on the XY, but on the OPZ they were called value keys. So just keep that in mind, that if you hear 1 through 4 and you're like, whoa, I pressed a button and everything went weird, check that you were pressing the right 1 through 4, because that's going to throw you off every time, especially when you're trying to just like get used to navigating, you know? I just splashed a bunch of water on my face while I was trying to take a drink. Okay. Let's, all right. So we have these. Oh, and I appreciate the shout out for sure. They don't exactly sponsor me. That would be dope if they sponsored the stream or something officially, but, I do know Tobias was watching one recently, and also they've sent me stuff. Like they sent me the XY, you know? So, I'm pretty happy as long as I'm able to help beta test stuff and all that. So, wait, there's no sound? Okay, so, okay, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and proceed because, like I said, I've got some limited time. So resuming what I was just saying, which was just saying about, I was just talking about the instrument tracks. What we see here are 16 steps. These are going to be like the sequencer. Amazing, right? So at first, you're going to just see like a blank page, but you are legitimately just looking at a sequenced track. So you know the track that you're on and the steps that are on that. If you don't want to hear the metronome, press this button, and then go and tap this knob down. So sometimes I'll talk about turning a knob, and that's going to, in this case, adjust the volume of the metronome. But if I tap it, I'm going to go ahead and if I tap it, I will mute the metronome. I hope this isn't too loud or too quiet. Okay. So what we're looking at right now is actually a sample, and we're on a drum track. And drum tracks have 24 samples, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to erase these. We're going to get to drums later, actually. I think it might be a little more straightforward to start with something other than drums. I'm going to go to track 6. And the reason I'm going here is because the default patch is really not the best. Basically, here's what it sounds like. Okay, I can't stand this. I'm going to go ahead and increase. I'm going to go press this button, which is the mixer mode. And instead of going into any depth right now, I'm going to go ahead and go to 4. And this is sort of like an additional gain / volume. And this is such a crucial part of the sound of the XY in my mind that one of my first steps is generally setting these relatively high. That may not work for you. I usually keep the third encoder lower unless I'm trying to do something just really loud. But hopefully this makes things a reasonable level for us. Beautiful. Okay. So this patch is not my favorite. And the reason I'm using it as an example is because I want to talk about these buttons, which are going to change what we're seeing on the screen. So this is just going to change the track that's active. And it's changing what we're seeing on the screen, but these are all still just the first page of each of these instruments. So if I want to see the second page or the second sort of set of options, I would press this 2, this 3, or this 4. There's more to it than that, but I'm going to go ahead and go back to the first page here. A lot of these synths have a couple parameters that you might want to look out for. One is going to be noise. And so if I turn noise off, all of a sudden everything is a little bit clearer. If you're listening with headphones, you might also notice that the sound is sort of jumping around. That's one of the odd parts of the XY. It does some auto panning. So before we even get, well, no, let's put a pin in that. let's just keep moving forward. And let's talk about how you would make this sound maybe more interesting. We have 4 parameters we can adjust on this page. This one is a filter, which is interesting because we also have a filter on a different page. I'm going to go to the second page. This is the envelope. This is going to change how things sound. I don't think the scope of this video is going to be able to cover exactly what envelopes do. If you want to make it sound softer at the beginning, make that first one bigger. And if you want to go down to a quiet volume, make the third one quiet. There's just, I mean, I'm not going to go into what an envelope is, and I really like to think of simple things before I say them. Okay, so let's say that we've got this ready to go. We've got the settings dialed in on page 1 for the synth. And I'm realizing right now I've made one assumption. And so maybe I'll have to edit this back, which is we're seeing the steps here. We're seeing the sequencer right here. But what we're seeing right here are the keys. This is supposed to represent a keyboard with this row representing, this row representing the white keys of a keyboard and this row representing the black keys of a keyboard. So we've got an F here, a C here, an F here, another C. So it's a 24-note keyboard that we have to work with right here. This sequencer isn't clearly divided into segments of 4, but you might want to get used to looking at like, okay, so we know where 1 is. 5, the second set of 4, is going to be right where the big screen begins. And in fact, let me just do a kick drum. So we've got our keyboard here. Each note on the drum track, I've switched to track 1, each note on a drum track is going to be a different sound. And we're going to place this sound on 4 different steps. So the very first step, like I said, the second step we want to place it on is step 5. And that's because we're thinking about this being divided into 4 steps of 4, but that's not super visually obvious here. So if you line up with this screen, that's where 5 begins. On the other side of the screen is where 6 is, so that's where the third set of 4, if you want to think of it that way, 4 steps begins. And then at the end of, or at the beginning of this third encoder is where step 13 is. And that'll give us like the 4 on the floor, and that's the default step rate and stuff. So that was just kind of a brief look at what the sequencer does. Geez, this is a way more chaotic video than I expected it to be. My apologies. Feel free to chime in with questions, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep moving along. Each track, 1 through 8, and actually the other tracks, which we'll get to in a minute, each track has a filter on it. Also, let me know, does it make more sense for me to like do some stupid original one, or I could do like one of the easiest songs ever, like Bad Guy by Billie Eilish or something like that as my example. I hate to say this, but let me know in the chat and I will go ahead and take a look at that in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to keep talking about what these different pages are. So page 1 was the main settings. Page 2 is the envelope. There's a secondary envelope if we press any of these 4 knobs down, encoders down. The third page is this filter. That's a little glitchy, but pressing this down should enable or disable the filter. There's a bunch of different filter parameters, cutoff, resonance, etc. Don't have time to cover that. You can also change the type of filter by tapping the first encoder. And then this last one's key tracking. And here's how much the envelope affects it. Beautiful. Okay. The fourth page is the it's the LFO, but you can just think of it as like the modulation. So this is just what's going to give a bit of character to this. So you can generally set, you can generally set which parameters are being affected, how quickly they're being affected, and in what way they're being affected. But I'm not going to go into all the depth about that, but I do owe somebody an LFO video, so I'd like to get to that soonish. Maybe I'll just do that on a stream tomorrow. But this, similar to the filter, we can press M4 right here to turn off this modulation. So right now it is this is the vibrato LFO, and we can change that by holding Shift and pressing M4. Or sorry, vibrato tremolo. Let's keep it here for now. And I'll just make it really obvious. And so that turns that off. Okay, so hopefully this is like enough to get you started adjusting presets. But I still haven't actually talked about loading presets, and I haven't talked about changing the engine on a preset. But so let's just go ahead and just talk about loading presets. So if I hold Shift and I press any of these track buttons when I'm in instrument mode, if I press any of these tracks, it's going to bring up a preset menu. It'll tell me what preset was last loaded there. And in this case, it was the dielectric. If I hold Shift from this menu, I can change whether I'm looking at the category or the engine that's used on the presets. It changes how it's organized. I can use a second encoder to bring up a different patch, though. Let's just do this. I'm going to press this track button again just to go back, but I guess I could also just press 1. So this looks like it's using the sample engine, by which I mean I know for a fact it's using the sample engine. So there we go. Okay, so my point here is just that you can change these out however you want, and you're going to see the same exact things in instrument mode, which are the engine parameters. In this case, it's going to be the sampler, and this has a bunch more. So you can change the start point, you can change loop points, all that. Hope your first encoder works a little better than mine. There's a bunch that you could change here, and there's more you can change if you hold down Shift. It brings up a whole different set of parameters. So the first, like the second encoder changes the loop in point, but if I hold Shift, the second encoder actually tunes it. I don't remember what it was supposed to be at. Let's just reload it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and call that like the sound selection portion. The last thing I'll say is just, if you pull up the drum presets, that's where the drums are. The end. So let's go ahead and, one more really important menu to bring up before we move on to actually like putting down some notes, sequencing some stuff, and arranging it into something that we actually sort of like. It's probably going to be pretty simple, but hopefully at least, I know that you haven't put any notes in the sequencer now, so maybe this is a misleading video title, but hopefully now you have a sense of where things are, what the instrument tracks are, and how to adjust them. So the last setting to bring up is going to be, if I'm going to go back to track 6, which is what we were on before, I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to press the instrument mode button. And here is where I'm going to be able to control another filter, which is crucial, because that can make a big difference in the sound. If I scroll down to velocity sensitivity, that also makes a big difference. And then lastly, width can make a huge difference. So you may not be listening with headphones right now, but if you enable width, it's going to auto pan track, and this is going to determine how much it's panned. It doesn't go to negative values, but let me just put it to 100. And it sounds... So whether or not you can hear that, it was kind of bouncing around, and that's not the result of the LFO in this case. So let's keep going. I mean, there is a bit of the panning going on with the actual sample there. But let's go ahead and actually start making some music. So before we even get the beat going, let's just find like a couple notes that we like. I'm going to move to track 5. Hold shift, and I'm going to open up a preset, and let's find a preset that we like. I'll just find a lead preset. That's where we're at. That's the category we're at right now, so I'll stick with lead. And then I'm going to just cycle through them with this second encoder. Well, I like that. I like a lot of the sampled sounds that come on board with this, which makes me feel kind of lazy, but that's okay. Now, here's another thing. I'm here, I want to play a chord on this, but it's not in the right mode. So I'm going to go back to the envelope. Holding shift on M2 and M3 are going to bring up separate menus. And this, and it's, you hold shift while you're on there. You don't shift and tap it. You can if you really wanted to. But what I'm looking at is I want to change this from legato mode to poly mode. And so what I'll do is I'm going to just put a C right here. So that's how I'm going to start off by sequencing. You could start off adding notes however you want. There's a couple main ways. Let's just add these, though, by just like holding down where we want the note to be and then holding down where we want that note to end. So I had this take up the first 6 steps. I can check that by holding it down again, and it'll also show me what note's up there. I'm going to have it, let's jump up an octave, and I'll have this one hold for 4 steps. Down a whole step to right here, which I'll have it hold for 6 steps. I don't know. We've now made a masterpiece. And what we're going to do now is we're going to, all the way to the right, after the last step of the sequencer, next to the sequencer is this button that says 1 to 4 bar. So there are multiple pages that we can sequence, but holding this down also lets us make it, or lets us extend how long each step lasts. So right now we're at track scale 1, and that's going to mean that each of these lasts a 16th note. Right here, track scale 4, that means that it's going to be 4 times as long. So each is going to be a quarter note. We have each is going to be a half note, a whole note, or an entire bar per step. And then 0 is actually going to be, each of these just represents a 30-second note. Oh, we don't have to put ourselves through that, right? So from here, if you wanted to, you could adjust some of those parameters that we heard earlier, now that you have a couple notes. Now I'm just getting distracted. And this is supposed to be like a lesson or something like that. Also, I just want to like check again, like you know, I'm just going to make a random song. That's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm just sticking with this. I like what I have, but I don't want that to last the full time. So I held that same step down, and then I pressed a different step or I pressed a different step to change how long this one lasts for. If we think this is a bit loud compared to other tracks, we could open up that mixer page that we were at before when we adjusted the master output levels. And these 4 right now are going to represent the sends to FX1, which I think is delay by default, which I know is delay by default. FX2, which is reverb. Panning. And pressing this down to the center resets it for the pan. And then this last one is going to be the volume. So let's increase those effect sends again. Pressing this down is going to mute the MIDI notes on this track. It's going to mute the sequence, but it doesn't mute you from playing notes on the track on top of that if you want. Okay, so how am I going to take somebody from being at this spot with 3 notes to having a song? Well, you know, I guess to be honest, we're at the spot where we're almost ready to just start adding layers and moving quickly. So I'm going to, now that I've talked about sends to FX1 and FX2, let's talk about the other mode other than mixer and other than arranger, or sorry, other than mixer and instrument, there's also aux track mode. And so these are what these little icons represent. There's the brain, which we don't use. Just kidding, lots of people like it, but I'm also trying to make it, never mind. Anyway, there's punch-in effects. There's all these things that we don't need to know right now. What I do think is important to know first is the effects tracks. So that's FX1 and FX2. And so by default, this reverb actually is a bit extreme, but the tone is so low that it's hard to hear. These also have envelopes that we can turn on. So similar to the instrument tracks, these aux tracks will have some sort of engine or display, at least for these last few. This is going to show actually send levels instead, a filter, and then an LFO. And we can sequence notes on here if we want. If we don't have, if we're just on this track and we press any key, it's going to play the last or instrument track that was active. Just so you can kind of preview it. So what I just did there, sorry. What I just did there is I used one of the modulation pages, or I enabled the modulation for here on page 4, on M4. And then I changed which page it was modulating and which parameter. I wasn't actually looking closely. I can't read it super easily. But that sounds kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and include that and keep it like that, even if it sounds maybe a bit weird as we add in other things. This auto-saves, sort of. It will auto-save this project and reload it if I turn it off and turn it back on. But if I press new, there's no recovering this usually. So press project, this button up here, and then I'm going to just save this for now. You're probably going to want to rename it or shift save as to save it under a new name. But for right now, I'm just going to keep this like this because I'm already behind on time and we were supposed to make your first song. So your first song is going to have some sort of notes, probably some sort of slower progression, something atmospheric, and it's going to send to the effects tracks. We already have that. I'm going to now go to the arranger, and this is something that took me a long time to appreciate. So press arranger, and this is going to show me the patterns that I'm on, or it's going to show me the notes on each track. I can make a new pattern for a track, including putting a new engine on this track or a different sound entirely. I could delete things here. I can also from here change which scene I'm in. So I can only have a maximum of, I think, 9 patterns per track, but you can have up to 99 scenes. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to hold shift, and because we only have track 5 active and I'm planning on putting some more instruments around, I'm just going to go ahead and mute everything but track 5 for scene 1. So I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to press plus, and that's going to bring us to scene 2. We could also type in 2, or we can type in 099 or whatever we wanted. But let's just go back to scene 2. I'm going to unmute this track right here. And let's go ahead and change the preset. And I'm just going to, let's go keys, but then I'm just going to use, yeah. And that's pretty loud. Maybe we'll make this a little louder too. Adjust the sends. Sorry, I did that very fast. So I found a sound that I liked, and then I immediately went back to the mixer to balance it out. So I pressed the mixer button to balance that out with that first track. And I can adjust the octave that the keyboard is in by pressing minus or plus. That's kind of an important one that I forgot from before. And why don't we just have it, and let's just copy that. So you can copy a step by holding it down until the top says copied, and then wherever I press, that step will also go. Going to turn the noise down on this. Going to turn the filter on. Change it to a different type of filter. Okay, so what I'm saying is find a couple different things, a couple sounds that you like, and if you're not sure what to do rhythmically, I literally at this point just added C's. I was just playing notes. I guess I really can't teach theory in this one, but not that I know much theory. I know like first year music theory stuff, basically. First semester maybe, if I'm lucky. What I think I might do now is I might go back to Arranger, hold shift and press plus. And now I'm going to take this one, I'm going to copy the pattern on this track. I'm going to hold it down so we solo it and we hear just what this track is. That's what I'm going to copy and paste. But what I'm going to do is I want it to sound really hollow. So what I did is I held shift and I pressed instrument, which is a shortcut that, again, I highly recommend you get very used to. I adjusted the second knob to move up to high pass. That didn't make all the difference I wanted it to, but that's okay. Let's add some rhythm actually from the LFO. So I'm going to press 4 to turn this on. Actually, I'll press Shift and 4, scroll to value, which is the most straightforward one, and let's make it 8th notes here. Let's make it affect whatever parameter quite a bit. I mean, we could even just have it do the filter. Oh, right, because this is a sample. So actually what I could do is I could hold shift and press 1 to change out just the engine. And so what I think I'll do is let's just bring up the Prism engine. Let's make it a little slower. Okay, so where I'm going with this is that you can add rhythm with the modulation and not just with drums. But let's finally just get to the drums. And actually, no. Psych. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this one as well, because for scene 3, I also want this track to change a little bit. This is probably where a high-pass filter would make a bigger difference. What if we just have it last the whole way? And let's make it... oh, sorry. So I'm holding down bar and I'm changing the track scale to 4 now. So it's going to last for 16 quarter notes or 4 bars or measures, whatever. And actually, in this case, on this one, let's... So I deleted both of those steps by just pressing them. So this is going to be kind of our build-up. You can hold shift and press plus to bring us to scene 4. And let's just bring us back to the original patterns, because why not? They're not that great, but whatever. But now I'm going to unmute tracks 1 and 2, which is where I'm going to put my drums. I promise that I'm going to... Oh, actually, before we move on, let me just arrange this with what we're going to do, because we're basically getting near the end. Arranger mode has the arranger button. If you press it again, you can also view the patterns and the engines on the effects tracks and all of the aux tracks. You can tell by the color of this, or it'll show you FX instead of just like the number of the track. So if there's one more thing that I can do with this, and that's holding down shift and pressing arranger. This brings me into song mode. This is where I can hold shift and start to add in different scenes and then change the way that scenes are, like the order that scenes are played. Basically, it's pattern chaining. I don't know why I'm making it sound so fancy. So all I did there is I held shift and I pressed the number keys 1 through 4. So it's showing how far I am through this, through the pattern. Okay, so now you hopefully get the idea. The problem is that if I want to go back to where I was, if I press play, it's going to take me back to the beginning, the very first scene. So I've got to go back to arranger and hold shift and press 4 to go back to that 4th scene. And this is basically where we're going to have to end. If I hold shift and press 1, let's scroll through the drum kits. That's kind of cool. Let's do that. Why would I not explain this? So we're on the drum tracks. Generally, the kicks are right here on these first 2 keys. I can change octaves, similar to how I can on a synth track, but it just is going to change the pitch of these 24 different samples. They can be stereo, they could be up to 20 seconds. But for right now, let's just make a pattern. Let's just make a pattern. So right now, I just added in kicks. So if I wanted instead to add in that drum, I would press it. I can press these. Press the steps where I want. Remember that it's going to align that 2, or like this second set of 4 steps is going to align with the beginning of the screen. So that's how I knew how to put it there. And then that just happen to know the third encoder. For track 2, we're going to do a very similar thing. I'm just going to go ahead and put one on each step. Why not? I could add a second bar or copy a bar by holding bar and pressing plus. That's just going to add a second bar, which is going to be silent because I didn't put any steps on it. Or I could hold bar, press minus to go back to just one bar. I can hold shift and press plus to copy that first bar to the second. And this is where I can, you could just, I don't know, add some variation. I can go back to mixer. I can adjust the levels of these. Change the panning. I can hold shift and press instrument to open up that instrument page again. I could add that high pass filter on it. Could go back to the mixer and I could add a send to the reverb. Go back to track 1, add a send to the reverb as well. If you want to adjust 2 tracks, you could hold them down and... Oh wait, it's also muting them. Oops, didn't think about that. Huh. Oops. Oh, that's kind of cool. One more thing, it would be unfortunate if I forgot to mention step components. One of my favorite things. I just did a whole stream about them. I've done plenty of videos on them, but I'll just show very briefly. If I hold shift, the most important one to know is this last one. If I hold shift and press that additional drum hit, and I press this second E, it's going to show me pressing these value keys is going to do something weird, but numbers are going to flash. That's going to represent when the notes play on this step and when they don't. That's what it means when it says trigger up there. Not all of these follow the same logic. I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but I just want this to happen. Let's do this 3. So instead of the third of every 3 times, I'm going to have it happen. I kept pressing 3 and cycled through, and now it's going to have that extra accent hit on 2 and 3 of every 3. One more thing about this sequencer before I call this kind of good enough. Even though I recognize that this is a pretty messy one, sorry. Is I can, if I've got a track with a bunch of notes here, I can see just one note. Like, do I have any of this on the track? I can press record and it'll show me. Do I have any of this on the track? No. Do I have any of this? No. Well, what is that? Oh. Yeah, so that one doesn't change. But if I change some of these to... Why not? We can see that it's going to remove everything that isn't one of the steps. If I hold down a note and press record, it's going to show me what steps contain that note, if any. Okay, so this is not everything this machine is capable of. I've barely scratched the surface in a lot of ways, but my point here was just kind of being like, how would you make a super generic song and get a basic idea of how to make changes in a way that lets you start to experiment, even though this doesn't cover a whole ton. Remember, I said it kind of autosaves, but not exactly, so I'm going to... I'm actually going to save this, but then I'm going to rename the project. And let's name it, I don't know, day 1. Why? I don't know. I'll call it day 1. And now we've got our project. Let's hold shift and press this. I don't want it to repeat and loop over again, so I'm going to turn that first encoder counterclockwise. Add a bunch more fours here. That's unnecessary, but that's kind of fun. I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to hold shift to press 4, and even though that's where we're at, it just took us out of song mode and now we're just infinitely looping this track. I'm going to go back to song mode to just delete those extra 4s I added. Save us. Whoops, didn't mean to do that, but that's all right. Go back. Why am I moving so fast? Go to Arranger, go to Scene 4, and what was there's one more real quick thing I wanted to show. Oh, let's go to Mixer. So now that we have some of these figured out, some of these levels adjusted, sends adjusted, we can go back to our master track. We can adjust that compressor. We can go to this third page, and you have to be real subtle here. So I'm going to turn gain off, and I'm going to turn clip off. I'm going to turn mix just slightly up. Let's bring it to a higher tone, and I'm going to turn up gain. We're going to hear a lot of distortion in the higher end. This is an EQ, but it's kind of weird. Okay, I hope this has been somewhat helpful. Man, this feels so chaotic to me, but let me know if you have any questions. Hit me up if you want to do a live lesson at some point or a one-on-one lesson at some point. Let's see, what else to say? I don't know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. I'm about to go take a singing lesson, and that means, that definitely means getting possibly attacked by my cat. So wish me luck, and then I've got work later on. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Yeah, see you next time.